Happy Mario Day, my awesome subscribers and friends and community members. It is a great day to be a video game fan. We are celebrating the most iconic mascot, the most iconic character in all of gaming. And what better way to do so than to make a video and talk about one of, if not the most influential video games ever released, Super Mario Bros. For the Super Nintendo. Let's go. You know, sometimes we take it for granted. The simplicity of it, the way it plays, the fact that decades later, people still talk about it, still play it, still use it as the baseline when talking about what makes a great game. Super Mario Bros. Isn't just iconic because it's old, and it's not iconic because it's nostalgic. It's iconic because it works. Still. Right now. Better than it has any right to. Especially 40 years later. And not just in a technical way. It resonates on a personal level. It's one of those games where every single element just clicks together like gears in a machine. The controls, the pacing, the structure, it all just flows. There's something about it that just clicks. Something so instinctive that even someone who's never held a controller before can pick it up and understand exactly what's going on within a few seconds of playing. That isn't by accident either. That is intentional game design. That's craft. A masterclass in making something that feels effortless while actually being full of careful thought and planning. Most games can't manage that even now, decades later. Before this, most games were either arcade style or single screen affairs. You had high scores, patterns, loops. The goal was to survive or chase points, not to explore or reach the end of anything. And then came in Super Mario Bros. For the Super Nintendo in 1985. And suddenly, there's a new sense of direction. You're not just playing. You're going somewhere. And that shift changed the language of video games forever. Suddenly, progression actually mattered. Goals mattered. Level design became storytelling, a new medium for telling stories. And you were doing more than just fighting for a high score. You were fighting for the princess. Our princess. The structure had meaning. A world map wasn't just a series of levels. This whole thing, this whole game is one long, connected, continuous story. The game introduced a destination, a purpose, and a main character that will stand the test of time for 40 plus years to come. This game was a triumphant leap forward in game design and in how people thought what a video game could be. Suddenly, players were doing more than just surviving. They were advancing through a story. Moving forward actually meant something now. That idea of going forward, of having a purpose beyond just lasting longer, set the groundwork for practically every single game that followed it. The first level is the real tutorial. There's no text, there's no menus, there's no nothing. Just pure gaming. You move right because you can't go left. You jump because there's a Goomba walking towards you. You hit a block and a mushroom pops out. You try to avoid it, but it bounces off a pipe and it hits you anyway. And instead of dying, you power up. Now you're bigger. That's learning through doing. And it's baked into every part of this game. You get better by just playing the game. There's no spending extra money. There's no unlockables. There's no nothing. You get better by progressing. Not because the game tells you what to do, but because the environment shows you. The game world shows you. Pipes, gaps, enemies, power-ups, they're all teaching tools that are disguised as obstacles. And the further you go, the more you build on what you've already learned. The challenge scales, but so does your skill. What makes it even more impressive is how seamlessly it all escalates. Every new idea is introduced in a safe space before it's used in a dangerous one. You see a gap, you learn how to jump. You face two enemies at once, you learn timing. You get a fire flower and suddenly the rules of combat have completely shifted. All without a single tutorial or instruction screen. That is true elegance in design. One of the big reasons that Super Mario Bros. Still holds up 40 years later is because Mario just feels good to control. There's momentum, there's weight, there's true nuance. Jumping isn't just a binary action, it's something that you have to learn how to finesse. You have to get good at it. You have to start to understand how long to hold the button, when to sprint, when to brake. It's a feedback loop that never stops being satisfying, ever. And once you understand that movement, the game becomes a rhythm, a kind of dance between you and the screen. You're reacting, you're adjusting, you're improvising. It becomes instinctive, and that's not easy to pull off. That's something that's refined, not stumbled into. Every jump feels deliberate in this game. Every pipe that you duck into is a choice. The way that Mario slides just a bit when you stop running, the way that momentum carries through a jump, it all contributes to a level of control that is incredibly rare, especially in 1985. It makes you want to replay levels just to feel that flow again, to find smoother lines, better paths, more satisfying moves. It rewards mastery without punishing beginners. Super Mario Bros. Is far from an easy game, especially in the later levels, but it's never unfair. It very rarely feels like the game is trying to cheat you. When you mess up, it's usually because of something that you did or didn't do. The game gives you the tools, and then it steps back and lets you figure out the rest. And that kind of design fosters growth not only in character, but in how you are as a gamer. You start noticing patterns, you learn enemy behavior, you get better. Not because the game got easier, but because you're doing the work. That's something that modern games still chase. A sense of challenge that empowers, not punishes. And the blueprint was released 40 years ago. Every enemy, every platform, every trap is placed deliberately. And it's all designed to make you think just enough to push you just a little bit further each and every time. The difficulty curve is very smooth, but it's not soft by any stretch. You're constantly learning, you're adjusting, you're redefining your playstyle. And the game respects your time. Levels are short, but they're very dense. Failures are quick, respawns are instant. You're not wasting time here. You're always in the action, you're always learning, you're always doing something. And that's why it never gets frustrating the way that some older games do. It's hard, but fair. And that balance truly is everything. Look at any platformer that came after this. The DNA is in there. This game transformed gaming forever. That's not even debatable. Power-ups, secret areas, checkpoints, level themes, it all started right here. And it wasn't just the mechanics, it was the tone, it was the structure, it was the characters, it was the story, it was the pacing, it was the idea that a game could be a journey, that it could be a true medium of storytelling, of legitimate and respectable storytelling. And even outside platformers, the influence of Mario is everywhere. Designers still reference this game when building tutorials. Players still use its language when describing movement. It did a hell of a lot more than just set a standard. It created one. Think about how many genres have borrowed from Mario. How many other games tried to recreate its sense of discovery, its balance of challenge and fun? It wasn't just about what it introduced, it was about how it refined everything around it. It took raw, unbridled potential and molded it and gave it a perfect form. It proved that that idea that a video game could be artful, that a video game could be structured and have meaning and still be fun, it proved that with perfection. And the crazy part of it all, it's still good. Like, really good. You can pick it up today and it still feels sharp. It's tight, it's fast, it's intuitive. It's not just important because of what it did back 40 years ago. It's important because of what it stands for and because it still works today in 2025. That's rare and that's special. And yeah, maybe nostalgia plays a role. I'm sure it does. I mean, I was -16 when this game came out, so I don't have a ton of nostalgia for when it came out, but I obviously have beat it more times than I can count. This is one of my favorite and most important games ever to me. But nostalgia alone doesn't make a game good or make a game replayable. The reason that myself and people keep coming back to it is because it was built on fundamentals that never stopped being fun at the very end of the day. It still teaches, it still challenges you, it still entertains you, And there's a purity to it, a kind of clarity in design that most games can't touch and can't recreate. It's proof that you don't need complexity or a $150 million budget to create depth. You just need a message. You need a voice, purpose, intention, and an understanding of what people want and how people play. Sometimes the simplest games are the ones that last the longest, as we've seen plenty of times before. And Super Mario Bros. Isn't just a classic because it was first, it's a classic because it's still one of the very best. And even now, it's not just a piece of history, it's the blueprint, the foundation, the spark that made this whole medium what it is today.